The US national anthem calls my home the land of the free, but there's plenty of things that you can't say. There's a lot of stuff you're not allowed to do, and believe it or not, you don't own all of your property completely. So I'm asking myself, is it worth it for me to uproot my life and move somewhere else in order to be completely free? Hi, my name's Tyus. I make videos about personal freedom, escaping the rat race, and a lot of that comes down to financial freedom. On my bookshelf here in my office, I keep this book on financial freedom. And it begs the question, what exactly is a nomad? Let's find out. Historically, a nomad was somebody who didn't have a home. They would travel around, and you might say, well, why would they do that? And there's a lot of reasons. One is maybe they were exiled from their community. A lot of people lived in camps of people that would travel continuously. A lot of people owned livestock that needed to find fresher, newer pastures in order for them to graze and live. But nowadays, when people refer to themselves as nomads, they're talking about something completely different. These are people that travel around the world in order to live where they're treated best. And these are often people that do it for their own personal freedom, often financial, but for other reasons as well. Here in the United States, people are leaving their homes all the time. In fact, right now, there's a mass exodus taking place from California and from New York. These are some of the most populated areas in the country, and yet people are leaving them in droves, and they're moving to three primary states. One is Texas, one is Florida, and the third is where I call home, which is Nevada. Now, why are people leaving California and New York? These are amazing places, incredible weather, incredible opportunities in these places. Why are they leaving these places to travel to Nevada, Texas, and Florida? What do those places have to offer? What they offer is two basic things. One is low regulation, and the other is low taxes. Low regulation means that you're going to have full autonomy over yourself, or at least more of it. The more regulated you are, the less autonomy you have, the less freedom you have to do with your life what you want to. So if you live in a place that has less regulation, you can move around, you can travel, you can live your life on your terms, do what you want with your body, and run the business you want to have in the way you want to run it, I guess. Taxes, on the other hand, seem to be less about freedom. They seem to be more about paying our duty to society, taking care of other people, and we're told that it's something that is patriotic. However, if you were to define slavery, it might be thought of as somebody who controls your body, and anything you do with your labor, they own that work. So if you were taxed at 100% of all your labor, that would be complete enslavement. Here in the United States, we're taxed at 30 to 40% of our labor. So are we 30 to 40% enslaved? That's really the reason why people are moving to areas that charge less taxes. Nevada, Florida, and Texas all have zero state income tax. And you might think, well, wouldn't this be a drag on these cultures, on these areas, these places that have no taxes? How could they possibly be doing well? Well, actually, you can look at places that have zero taxes, and they do pretty incredibly well. The United Arab Emirates, which is one of the richest places in the world, Cayman Islands, Bahamas, Monaco, all of these places charge zero in tax. The United States didn't charge any income tax for about 137 years. We grew from being the smallest country, the least, not smallest geographically, but the smallest as far as government size. We grew from being the smallest government, the smallest country as far as influence. And with that, by charging no tax, by having utmost freedoms put in place, we became one of the most admired countries on the planet. You know, the land of opportunity is what we were called. And it wasn't until 1913 where we implemented an income tax that we promised was going to go away and only impact the super, super rich. Well, now it impacts everybody, and in many ways it impacts the poor more than it impacts the rich. And you might say, well, why is that? Aren't the rich charged a higher amount of taxes than the poor? Well, yes, they are, but the rich also have the means to leave the country if they're being charged too much. In fact, that is what's happening. We're seeing rich people leaving the United States in droves, really. And where are they going? Well, one popular destination is Puerto Rico, which is still kind of part of the US. It's a US territory, but it's not a US state. But it has been putting into effect laws that are really attracting the rich. And they do this to benefit Puerto Rico. For example, they've created about 12,000 new jobs, and they're collecting taxes there that they wouldn't have collected had the rich not moved there. The laws in question that have really attracted people have been called Act 20 and Act 22. Act 20 is all about export service companies. So what are these companies doing? They have a service and they export it somewhere else. So it's not a good, it's not something that they build. They don't create a phone and then ship it somewhere. They take a service. So they might be a consulting company, they might be a marketing firm, or they might be a law firm, a legal firm. And they essentially can sell that anywhere they want in the world because we now live in a digital world, a digital economy. Well, Puerto Rico Act 20 basically says that these companies have to pay only 4% corporate tax rate. And that's an incredibly low tax rate for these companies to pay. Act 22, though, is really the big one. It makes people tax exempt for their dividends, for interest, for capital gains. Now, you might not have a lot of these things. I don't have as many of these as I'd like to, but if you're really rich and you're investing a lot of money, dividends, interest, and capital gains is where a lot of your money goes. But there is a catch. You have to live in Puerto Rico 51% of the time, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're there half of the year. Believe it or not, a day is categorized by somebody who's in Puerto Rico for 1 minute. That counts as a whole day. So a lot of super rich people that are flying around and jet setting, they'll land their plane in Puerto Rico for 1 minute just to log their time saying, hey, I was there, and then take off and go to their next destination in their busy time of living and, I don't know, jet setting, whatever rich people do. I don't know. I'm not that crazy rich. But this is the only place in the world where people can essentially have these tax breaks given to them if they're a US citizen. Now, other places around the world are seeing what Puerto Rico's done and attracting business people and rich people into their area, and they're saying, hey, we want in on the action. And one of those places is called PROSPERA. This is in Honduras. It's one of the islands of Roatan, and they're essentially attracting business owners to both move there, but also create businesses there. And let me give you some examples of how they're incentivizing people to do that. If you're a business person and you want to create a business entity, you can create it in the United States, or you could create it in this place called PROSPERA. But if you create it in the United States, it's going to take twice as many steps to get it done. And in PROSPERA, it takes 1/4 of the time. It also costs 30% less to do it in PROSPERA than it does in the United States. Let's say you need to get a permit for your business. Well, the US takes 15 times more steps, has 15 times more compliance steps to getting a permit issued to you. It also takes 89 times longer, and it costs over 150 times more to get a permit than it does in PROSPERA. If you are trying to hire people, PROSPERA, they have less than half of the labor laws that the United States has, and they're charging 25% less in taxes. So it makes sense that business people are going to PROSPERA, maybe moving there to create their citizenship there, but at minimum, opening up entities there to do business. And PROSPERA is going to win in getting all this tax revenue that would have initially gone to the US. Another place that I've been keeping my eye on is a place called Liberland. This is a micronation that is between Croatia and Serbia. And it's pretty amazing if you're just looking at the stats of this place. It has incredible liberty, unbelievable freedom, and one of my favorite Bill of Rights. So the US has a Bill of Rights. In fact, a lot of countries have Bill of Rights, but most countries, the way the Bill of Rights is written, implies that the rights are given to citizens by the government. However, the US is one of the few places where it says the government shall write no law. Basically saying the Bill of Rights is about restricting the government from infringing on people's inherent rights. And Liberland goes much further with this idea, basically saying that freedom of speech is completely unlimited there. It has incredible privacy rights, fair trade rights, rights to equality, which basically means that nobody has special privilege over another person, a right to self-defense, property rights, and the property rights are incredible. So we're not just talking about people can't have their stuff confiscated. There is no tax. There is in the Constitution, they're not allowed to write into law anything regarding taxation, which means zero tax forever there. However, there is a catch. This place is only 7 years old, and it's not recognized by very many countries and places around the world, and the land that it's on is disputed. So if you want, you can become a citizen there for just 10 grand, which is incredibly low in price, but this country might get taken over by one of its neighboring countries very, very quickly. And that's really one of the big problems we have with attaining liberty. It's that we all live on this one planet and there's this scarcity of land, and all that land has been claimed up by bureaucrats and power-hungry people that essentially say, well, you can live in my area, or even if you were born in my area, I'm going to take some of what you make and I'm going to restrict parts of your freedom. Because of that, some people have been looking toward a new alternative, one of which is called seasteading. And this is the idea of essentially having floating cities out there, because while all the land is taken, the oceans are not. And so they're proposing that they convert cruise ships into cities, or they take those oil platforms and basically convert them into a floating city in the middle of the ocean, or maybe creating modular islands that can connect and detach from each other. And there's even been proposals for creating monolithic islands that are just man-made, essentially giant floating cities. What's the problem with these things? Well, they don't exist because they're incredibly expensive. They would cost a fortune to put into effect. You also need to create goods and do trade with other countries, and a lot of countries wouldn't like the fact that you intentionally built this place to escape their laws. So there's a lot of contestation with this, but there's a lot of organizations that are actually working very, very hard to make this a reality. There's even a couple that are now living at sea, and they have been for several years. They created a platform and they live there, but it's just 2 people. To make this a real reality, we're gonna need to see cities out there. We're gonna need to see huge groups of people that are all surviving in their own little private utopia. So if given the opportunity, would you do this? If you were given an opportunity to move somewhere else where you could have complete freedom, would you become a nomad? And if so, what would be the requirements for it? What would you need? Would you need beachfront property? Would you need to be able to have a lot of room? Or would you need it to be a big city where there's a lot of commerce taking place? Comment below. I'd like to know what your requirements would be. Also, if you haven't yet, subscribe. And looking at how many subscribers I've got, odds are you haven't subscribed yet. So if you're enjoying this content, please subscribe to my channel, because I will be putting out a lot more videos on how to become personally free yourself. So subscribe, share this with people you love and that are like-minded or that need to hear the message, and I hope to see you on the next video.